From 1915 to 1953, African Americans in the United States experienced a period in which slavery's abolishment has made no differences in the lives of the blacks. African Americans continue to struggle in poverty as agricultural and domestic workers, where their economic status has little changed. These discriminations, however, brought strength and unity to the group, as cultural movements such as the Great Migration and the Harlem Renaissance of the 1920s sparkled hopes into the people. It eventually provided motivations for them to revolutionize their status and rights in the society.
It could all be traced back to the enacting of the Jim Crow Law. It was a series of state and local laws in the United States enforced between 1876 and 1965, which mandated segregation in all public facilities. The laws led to treatment and accommodation that were usually inferior to those provided for white Americans, resulting in a number of economic, educational, and social disadvantages. These limitations were placed on blacks on the access to transportation, schools, restaurants, and other public facilities. It also prohibits the black from participating in any political positions. Other than that, under the laws, most blacks were denied the right to keep and bear arms, therefore unable to protect themselves. During this period, millions of African Americans were killed and brutalized.
A positive change in African American society sparkled when the First Great Migration, a movement between 1910 to 1930, numbering about 1.6 million migrants leaving mostly rural areas to migrate to northern and midwestern industrial cities. And soon after the Great Depression, a second Great Migration which took place between 1940 to 1970, in which 5 million or more people moved, including many to California and other western cities, took place. They left their homes from 14 states of the South, especially Alabama, Louisiana, and Mississippi, to the other 3 cultural regions of the United States. The primary push factors for migration were segregation, the widespread violence of lynching, and a lack of opportunities in the South. In the North, they could find better schools and adult men could vote, later also joined by women after 1920. Job opportunities created by growing industries also served as a major motivation for the movement. By the end of the Second Great Migration, African Americans had become an urbanized population. More than 80% live in the cities. A majority of 53% remained in the South, while 40% live in the North and 7% in the West. Cities including Detroit, Chicago, Cleveland, and New York City had some of the biggest increases in the early parts of the 20th century. Blacks were recruited for industrial jobs, such as positions with the expansion of the Pennsylvania Railroad. African Americans moved as individuals or small family groups. There was no government assistance, but often northern industries such as railroads, meatpacking, and stockyards recruited people.
Meanwhile, the Harlem Renaissance, a time of incredible cultural achievement among African Americans, also took place during the 1920s and 1930s, which brought changes into the lives of African Americans. A number of firsts were met in terms of education, music, literature, and arts. Despite the lynchings and violence still prevalent in many parts of America, the African American experience was able to be conveyed to the world through the voices of numerous talented individuals. In literature, people like playwright Richard Lee Torrance, who incorporated African American actors into his plays, and poet Claude McKay, who published a militant sonnet, If We Must Die, that mirrored the lives under racism, have all brought new sight to African American culture. In music, jazz musicians at the time like Fats Waller, Duke Ellington, Jelly Roll Morton, and Willie the Lion Smith were very talented and competitive, and were considered to have laid the foundation for future musicians of their genre. Their music became more and more attractive to whites, and soon brought the merging of white and African American compositions. Overall, Harlem Renaissance served as a period that helped African Americans gain recognition through intellect and production of literature, art, and music that would challenge the pervading racism and stereotypes to promote progressive politics, as well as racial and social integration.
Not only did contributions in culture took place during the period, many African Americans devoted their lives to the victory of World War I and II when they fought for their nation. The United States enters World War I on April 6th. Some 370,000 African Americans joined the armed force, with more than half serving in the French war zone. Over 1,000 black officers commanded these troops. In 1941, Benjamin Oliver Davis, who in 1945 was named commander of Goodman Field, Kentucky, and the first African American to command a military base, became the first African American to be named general in a regular army. The same year, on June 25th, President Franklin Roosevelt issued Executive Order 8802, desegregating war production plants and creating the Fair Employment Practices Committee. Furthermore, in 1942, the U.S. Marine Corps accepts African American men for the first time at a segregated training facility at Camp 4 Point, North Carolina. And in 1943, the Naval Academy at Annapolis and other naval officer schools accept African American men for the first time. During the war, 2 American Navy destroyer ships, the USS Mason and the submarine chaser, PC-1264, are staffed entirely by African American crews. By the end of the war, 1 million African American men and women have served in the U.S. military. Their hard work eventually paid off when finally, on July 26, 1948, President Harry Truman issued Executive Order 9981, directing the desegregation of the armed force, bringing unity to all races.
What's Harlem Renaissance?
I don't know. I've only heard of the Harlem Shake.
Do the Harlem Shake.